Hello and welcome to this tutorial for users of Microsoft Excel 2016 for the Mac. In this tutorial we're looking at another function that will help you automate spreadsheet content, and that function is the VLOOKUP function. And you can see here I have a table that I need to complete, and further down the spreadsheet we have a data table, and that data table contains code numbers in column 1, items or product names in column 2, and the prices in column 3. And what I'd like to do is to be able to type in the code number in my top table and have Excel retrieve information from columns 2 and 3 and automatically complete my description and price columns on the table here. Now if I type in code 1001 to start with and tab across into cell B2, nothing happens. So I'm going to create the VLOOKUP function in cell B2, and to begin type equals on the keyboard and then the name of the function, which is VLOOKUP, and then open parentheses, and the different parts of the function, as with the if function, go between parentheses. And we also get this line of information to guide us through the creation of the function. And the first thing that Excel wants is the lookup value. And the lookup value is obviously the value that Excel uses to retrieve information from the table. So in this case, it's the code number, and that's contained in cell A2. So I simply click on the cell that contains that value. So type a comma to separate the different parts of the function. And next I need to select the range of data in the table. So if I come down to the table, I'll explain a couple of things that you need to know when you're creating data tables for a lookup function. The first thing is that the lookup value should be the first column. In this case, of course, it's my code numbers. You could also use text as a lookup value if you want to. However, the important thing to keep in mind is that the column must be sorted, either A to Z in the case of text or 0 to 9 in the case of values, as I have here. So low to high is the sorting that you should apply for your table to work correctly. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you select the range for the lookup function, remember to select only the data. Do not include the column headers. So once that's selected, I'm also going to set that as an absolute reference, so I can press the F4 key. In my case, that applies those dollar symbols to fix that table reference. So I'll type a comma again, and next I need the column index number. And the column index number is simply the number of the column that contains the information I want to retrieve. In this case it's the item column, so that's column number 2, and so I type the number 2, and I'll come back to this range lookup later on, but just for now I'm going to close the parentheses to complete the function, press the enter key, and you can see there we get the item gas stove, which is indeed code 1001. If I come back to my code cell and type in 3001, we should get the deluxe tent, and we do. So the function is working. And if I just come back to cell B2, again keep in mind that the spreadsheet will show the results of the function, and you can always see the details, the actual function itself, in the formula bar. I'll come across to cell C2 and complete the VLOOKUP for my price column. So again, equals on the keyboard, the name of the function, VLOOKUP, open parentheses. The lookup value is the code number contained in A2, so click on the cell that contains your lookup value, type a comma, select the table data range, and remember to only select the data, not the column headers. Make your range an absolute reference if you're going to be copying the formula down to other rows, as I am here. Type a comma again, and in this case my prices are in column 3, so I type the number 3, again close the bracket there, press the enter key. But the benefit of that is that I can now change that code number to something like 2001, and Excel will now automatically enter those pieces of information from the table. So I'll go ahead and just complete the table by selecting those two existing functions and then click and drag down to complete the table. Again, remember, all you need to do is put the mouse pointer at the bottom right of the selected range. You get the black cross, click and drag down. Now don't worry that we see these NA error messages. It simply means that I haven't typed my codes in yet. So if I go through and just type in some codes to complete the table there, you'll see as I type the codes, Excel retrieves the information from the table and saves me an awful lot of time. Now I'll just complete the table by putting the quantities in as well. So let's say 8 basic tents, 6 deluxe tents, 4 gas stoves, and maybe 10 sleeping bags. So you've seen there that the VLOOKUP function is another very useful way of automating spreadsheets, and it's a great time saver where you're repetitively entering information into tables. Simply create a data table that contains the information that you're repeatedly entering, and then use VLOOKUP functions in combination with a code number that retrieves the information that you want. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's one part of the VLOOKUP function I've left off, one quite important part here. And I'll explain that if I go back to cell A2. What I'm going to do here is make an error typing the code number. So I would still like basic tent to be the item featured. So imagine I was wanting to type in 2001, but I accidentally typed in 2000. Press the enter key, and instead of tent, I get gas stove. Now, by making a simple mistake there, I've got the wrong item. And in a real world scenario, if I didn't spot that error, I might print this table, send it off to my ordering department and end up with 8 gas stoves when I actually wanted 8 tents. And the reason that Excel has put gas stove in there is that it's taken that code number 2000, it's gone down to the table, it's found the first value, 1001, and then it goes up to the next value, but it never actually reaches 2001 if you think about it logically. It only gets to 2000, and there's nothing in the table that matches 2000. So Excel simply assumes you meant the first item because you never get to the second item. So Excel basically is looking in a range of values, and the number 2000 comes in the range 1001 to 2000. It'll only return the value basic tent if I type in anything between 2001 and 3000. It'll return deluxe tent if I type in anything between 3001 and 4000, and so on. So what I need to do here is simply fix the function so that Excel is forced to only find exact matches in the table. So let's come back to my first function there, gas stove, and all I need to do here is click at the end of the function, and I'm going to type a comma and type the word false. You can also type the number 0 as well, but by typing the word false, I am forcing Excel to only bring me back precise matches to anything that I enter in the code column. So if I now press the enter key, you'll see that Excel correctly reports an error, which is good. So if I come back and now type 2001, which is the correct code, press the enter key, we do indeed get basic tent. I'll also need to fix the price column as well. So if I come to cell C2, click at the end of the function again, type a comma and type the word false to apply the exact match only. Again, press the enter key and that corrects that function. I'll select both functions in B2 and C2, and again just click and drag down to fix the table there. So anytime somebody accidentally types in the wrong code, for example if I type in 1000 instead of 1001, press the enter key, we get error messages instead of incorrect information. So I can come back and look at that and realize I've made a mistake and fix my error. Now there are circumstances where using the VLOOKUP to find values within a range of values is quite useful, and we're going to look at an example of that right now. So if I come to another spreadsheet, and here we have 2 tables. The one on the left contains examination results for a college, and the one on the right tells us what grade should be awarded depending on the score achieved in the test. So for example, on the data table you can see that between 0 and 39 the grade F would be awarded, and if we look a bit further down, between 60 and 74 the grade C should be awarded, and so on. And what I'm going to do is create a VLOOKUP function that enters the grade automatically into column C. And before I do that, there's one more useful thing I want to show you when you're working with VLOOKUPs and table ranges, and that's to give a name to the table range. So I'm going to select the data range that I would normally select for the VLOOKUP, so that's all the data excluding column headers. And then if I come up to the top left, to the left of the formula bar, you'll see the cell reference there, E4. If I click into that box and type in the name, grades, and then press the enter key, what I've done there is named that particular range grades, and that will come in very useful later on, as you'll see. So if I come now to cell C4, I'll create the VLOOKUP. So again, equals on the keyboard, the name of the range VLOOKUP, open parentheses. The first thing we need to enter is the lookup value. In this case, it's the result in column B. So I click on B4 type a comma, and here I would normally select the table range, but as I've named it, what I'm going to do now is press the F3 key on the keyboard, function key F3. It brings up this paste name dialog. There's only one in there that I've just created, the grades. So I'll click on that, click OK, and that then puts the table name into the function. And that's helpful if you have lots of different data tables and you need to identify which one is being referenced. If I type a comma, next I need to choose the column index number, and that's simply the column that contains the grades, which is column number 2. So type 2, and I'm not going to add the word false here because I want Excel to look at that table and find values within a range and not find precise values. So I'm going to close that function by closing parentheses, press the enter key, and you'll see there we get the correct results, which is grade D. So if you look where grade D is, the range between 50 and 59 returns a D. And if I then go back to that cell and click and drag down to complete the table, and you can see all the different grades that are awarded. And that's the benefit of using a non-exact match with VLOOKUP. So if you need to find values within a range of numbers, that's the way you do it with a VLOOKUP function. So that concludes this look at the VLOOKUP function. I hope you found it helpful. You can maybe apply this to the spreadsheets that you're working on. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.